Hello everyone, this is Neon. Welcome to Impromptu English with Neon, and today's video is all about IELTS Writing Task 1. So it's of the academic module, not of the general training module. So I will only be discussing reports of charts or graphs that you'll have to write in your IELTS Writing Task 1 academic module. So I will be discussing the format and strategies, and then at the end I will also be discussing how you will be actually scored by the IELTS examiner. So if you don't know me, some of my background here. So I got an overall band score of 8.5, Alhamdulillah, on my IELTS, and my video on that I just published 10 days ago, it has gotten over 34,000 views as I'm recording right now. I am over the moon. I can truly say that I finally made a viral video, or a video that has gotten viral. Thank you so much. And if you'd like to support me, please click on the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And also, I'm a university lecturer, and I have, Alhamdulillah, also published my first book. It's a novel. It's called Sociolinguistic Incompetence. It's available not in the Ekushe Boimela, but it's available at Batighar, stall number 117, 118 and 119 if you're interested in getting a copy. And also it's available at Rokomari. The relevant links will be posted in the description. Let's get started. So first you need to know some score requirements of the IELTS, and that also includes the format, because the format is of crucial importance. First of all, the number of words. You have to write a minimum of 150 words. So a lot of people often ask me, sir or bhaiya, can I write more than 250, 350, or is there an upper word limit? There technically is no upper word limit. Even if you write 1000 words, it's fine. But realistically speaking, you cannot actually write more than, I would say, 250 words on the IELTS Writing Task 1 report, because in that case it will be irrelevant. There is nothing that requires you to write so much. But yes, if you write below the word count, for example, if you write 120, 130, then it's a problem. So at least my suggestion is to go a little bit above the word count limit. So try to aim for about 180 words, 190. So for the format, it's very important because it not only matters in your coherence and cohesion, that part of the rubric, but also in your task response, because you should have a clear overview, and my suggestion is to write the overview in the second paragraph. Some people say that it should come at the end as a conclusion, but as it's just a report, there is no conclusion required. You can write the overview in the beginning, but not in the first paragraph, okay? Because my suggestion is to just paraphrase the background information in the first paragraph. That's all. It can even be one sentence, the first paragraph. So we will go through a worked example, actually 3 samples I have written, and in the second paragraph an overview is required. It's of the utmost importance that you write an effective overview. It should not have very tiny details in it. Okay, so it should be like an introduction. It should carry all the important points in 2 to 3 sentences. Then in the third body paragraph will be our first body paragraph. So it can be between 2 to 4 sentences. This is also only my suggestion. You can go beyond 4 sentences, but I would suggest you not to write this paragraph only with 1 sentence. Even if it's a very long complex sentence, try to write at least 2 sentences. And the fourth paragraph, it's actually optional, because you can finish an IELTS Writing Task 1 report within 3 paragraphs, as I will show you. But of course, if you write a 4th paragraph, it's not a problem. And in some cases even you can write a 5th paragraph, but I usually do not recommend it. So just stick to 3 or 4 paragraphs in total. So let's go to the first step. This is before you write the first paragraph, okay? This is only the brainstorming part. So let's look at the question. So this is the graph that's in the question. in the x-axis or the horizontal axis, we can see the months are here: January, February, March, April to December. And in the y-axis, we can see it's written percentage change in price compared with previous month. So there are three variables: copper, nickel, zinc. The graph is titled Average Monthly Change in Prices of Copper, Nickel and Zinc in 2014. Fine, so I think we have understood the graph. Throughout the year of 2014, from January to December, the prices of copper, nickel and zinc, they have sometimes increased, sometimes decreased. In this case, it's a graph. Particularly, it's a line graph. Okay, there are different types of graphs. There is a bar graph. There are other types of graphs, but this is a line graph. So in the overview paragraph, so do you remember that the overview paragraph comes where? In the first? No, in the second paragraph. So we are actually brainstorming not for the first paragraph, but for the second paragraph. And actually the overview will also guide our third and fourth paragraphs, or even fifth paragraph if we write a fifth paragraph. So it acts as a guideline to our entire writing task 1. So it may take even 5 minutes for you to brainstorm. It's fine. You get around 20 minutes. It is suggested that you should take around 20 minutes to finish it. You can just use 5 minutes for brainstorming and understanding the question. It's completely fine, because within 15 minutes it's quite easy to finish writing about 200 words. So don't worry about using some time for brainstorming. So after brainstorming, I have come up with these points. As you can see on the slide, this one is copper. As I'm tracing the screen, you can see this is copper. After analyzing, probably you will have found these points that it's in the second position. See, it was in the second position in January, and even in December it has remained in the second position. Sometimes it has been the third position, for example in November. Sometimes even the first position, for example in June. But it started out second, it ends at second, and it's relatively stable. See, it increases and decreases, but it is relatively stable. For example, look at zinc. Fluctuates a lot, and nickel fluctuates the most. It decreased so rapidly from January to March, and then again it decreased rapidly, drastically from May to June, but then it increased again. It increased from October to November, right? So it has changed the most. That's what I've written: decreased, then increased, greatest range. And also it's from first to third. So see, nickel, it was number 1, so it had the most changes in January, but at the end in December it has the least change, right? So for zinc also it's the opposite, from third to first. This is zinc at the beginning, and then at the end it's actually in the first position. So I have just in bullet points written these key features, like 2 to 3 key features for all the 3 metals. So let's go to the first paragraph, which is to paraphrase the background information. So this is the original question. The graph below shows the average monthly change in the prices of 3 metals during 2014. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So this is the whole question. Should we paraphrase the entire question? Obviously not. We should not paraphrase the second sentence, right? This is logical, this is common sense, that we will not paraphrase. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. There is no need to do this. We will only paraphrase the first sentence, okay? Instead of the graph, I wrote the line graph. The name of the graph is a line graph. I skipped the word below. There is no need to write that word. Shows the average monthly change. So instead of shows, I wrote displays, and instead of the average monthly change, I wrote the mean changes. Mean means average. The mean changes in the prices of copper, nickel and zinc. Here the words copper, nickel and zinc, they are not mentioned here in the background information part, but those were the 3 metals, right? Here it's written of 3 metals, and I wrote the particular names of the metals. But did you notice that I did not write the word monthly yet? Yes, because I kept this part to the end. I took it to the end because it's difficult to paraphrase the word monthly, especially in this sentence structure. So that's why I kept it to the end. In the mean changes in the prices of copper, nickel and zinc over the year 2014. So it said here during 2014 and I wrote over the year 2014 on a monthly basis. Let's go to the next step. The overview. This is the most important paragraph of the writing task 1. So we have already actually done the main part of the overview. What was it? That was the brainstorming part. So remember, these were the brainstormed points that we thought of. So from these points, how many points are there? There are 7 points, 2 to 3 for each of the metals. We will just write 2 to 3 sentences, okay? So there are a number of ways you can write the overview. Maybe you can write one sentence for copper, one sentence for nickel, one sentence for zinc, right? So in that case, I did not write about all 3 of them separately but together. See what I wrote? Overall, this is a good linking device to start your overview paragraph. Overall, it can be seen that the average costs of the 3 metals changed in various degrees. Why various degrees? Because it did not change equally like the others, with nickel showing the most drastic change while copper was the most stable, right? So nickel changed the most. Noticeably, while copper retained its position as the second most expensive metal out of the 3, so you can see here it retained the second position. Nickel went from being the costliest, which means the most expensive, to the least costly. So the costliest to the cheapest. Whereas the opposite was true for zinc. Zinc actually went from third to first. So I actually touched on most of these points, maybe 4 to 5 or even 6 of these points in 2 sentences. So I have color coded the text here so that it's easier for you guys to know where my sentence ended. This is one sentence in the black font and the purple font is another sentence. Remember that the third paragraph for a writing task 1 is actually the first body paragraph. And in this case, in this writing task 1, it is our only body paragraph. Okay, so I have written only one body paragraph in this report. So as you can see, I have only written 3 sentences. The text in white font, that represents the first sentence. The black font text represents the second, and the purple one represents the third sentence. Only within 3 sentences, I have written about the details of this chart, of this report of this chart. Let's read. Rankings of the metals in terms of price saw shifts throughout the year, with copper starting at second position, moving to third position within 1 month, topping the chart slightly before June, and then trailing off in November, to once again reaching second place. I did not only talk about these 2 points of copper, right? So these are only the brainstormed points. These will, of course, help you in this body paragraph as well by letting you think about the main points, but it is mostly for the overview paragraph. Because in the actual body paragraph you have to give more details. If you look at the marking criteria, if you look at the IELTS writing task 1 rubric, you will see that you have to include details. For example, the months. You should say something about March or June if it's relevant. You should say also something about the vertical axis, the y-axis, like the -1, 2, 3, 4, if they are relevant. So of course you should not write about all the values, right? It will make your writing maybe 500, 600 words, and it will also not be relevant and effective. So that is also something that you are being tested on. The price of zinc experienced a similar trend but with higher fluctuations, which means changes, such as a 2% increase from January to February, a 2% decrease in June, and a staggering rise of over 2.5% in November. So again, I'm talking about zinc's overall journey. Finally, as for nickel, it had an overall downward trend, plummeting from a 6% increase to a mere 1% increase in February, a similar fall in the month of June, and a significant increase of 3% in November. So, this is the full writing task 1 sample essay, the sample report that I've written here. I will not read the whole of it since I have already gone through line by line with you on this, but I'm pausing here so that you may try to take a screenshot or you may have a chance to look at the entire report. It's not very long, it's under 200 words. So there are some other samples. For example, this one. The chart shows the average number of hours each day that Chinese, American, Turkish, and Brazilian tourists spent doing leisure activities while on holiday in Greece in August 2019. So basically, people from China, people from America, Turkey, and Brazil. So they actually spent their holiday doing a number of different things. These three particular activities are shown here. This is a bar chart. So at the beach, reading books, visiting places, you can see that Chinese tourists, they mostly read books, whereas American and Turkish tourists, they actually did all three of the activities relatively similarly, and Brazilian tourists also had some variation. So let's read here. This is the paraphrase of the background information in the question. The given bar chart instead of the chart. So I've particularly written bar chart. Instead of shows, again displays the average number of hours. I have kept average. I could have written mean, but it's okay. The average time dash in hours dash. So a pair of dashes. Daily, instead of each day I wrote daily, that 4 countries tourists. And then I wrote from China, America, Turkey, and Brazil. Instead of Chinese, American, Turkish, and Brazilian, I wrote like this: from China, America, Turkey, and Brazil. Spent in their leisure time while holidaying in Greece in the month of August in 2019. So this is my overview paragraph. Overall, there seems to be more variation for Chinese tourists regarding leisure activities, as most of them spent their time reading books than being at the beach or visiting places. Tourists from Brazil also had some variation, as they generally preferred to spend their leisure time on the beach, and very few tourists went for sightseeing. As for American and Turkish tourists, their free time was somewhat similarly distributed among the 3 leisure actions of being at the beach, book reading, and going to visit new places. So here I have talked about mostly all of the types of tourists, right? All 4 of them. For example, 1 sentence for Chinese tourists, 1 sentence for Brazilian tourists, and 1 sentence for American and Turkish tourists. Why did I keep only 1 sentence for both of them? Because they share some similarities, that's why. In the body paragraph, I started out with taking a more micro level look at the graph. So I did this so that the examiner knows it's very clear that it's a body paragraph, not an overview paragraph. Micro level means very particular approach. It is evident that by far the least popular leisure activity for Chinese tourists was visiting places, which was generally 1 hour a day. So I also mentioned the number of hours. In contrast, the general Chinese tourist was a fan of reading books, which they did for about 8 hours every day. So how many sentences did I write for Chinese tourists? 2. As for American and Turkish tourists, there is a striking lack of variation in the fact that they, to some extent, evenly divided up their time during their stay in Greece. The range of hours they spent is 3 to 5 hours a day for both American and Turkish tourists, though the leisure activities themselves do not exactly match, as beach time and book reading time varied between the 2 countries' tourists, although the mean hours spent on sightseeing were the same. Finally, for tourists belonging to Brazil, the variation in regard to leisure actions, instead of activities I wrote actions, was high, as the range is between 2 hours, in brackets I wrote visiting places, to 6 hours being at the beach a day. So you can see that I have given more detail in this body paragraph. Another approach I could have taken here was that I could have written 2 separate paragraphs. Instead of 1 body paragraph, I could have divided the body paragraph into 2. For example, Chinese and Brazilian, I could have written 1 paragraph, and for American and Turkish tourists, I could have written another paragraph. Or maybe Chinese and American in 1, Turkish and Brazilian in another. I could have done it, but it's your choice. I would suggest you to write in 4. For example, see here. So this writing task 1 is actually divided into 4 paragraphs, and I would suggest you to follow this because it's easier to divide your writing into 2 body paragraphs. But it's also not a mandatory aspect. You can also write in 1 paragraph and sometimes even 3 body paragraphs. Let's read. The graph below gives information about the percentage of the population in 4 Asian countries living in cities from 1970 to 2020. So from 70 to 20, it's about the past, with predictions for 2030 and 40. So these 2 decades, the information about these two, they are only forecasts or predictions, because of course we're living in the year 2024 now. So these 2 decades have not come yet. These are predictions. So be prepared to write in the future tense or write is expected to for these 2 parts, and for the others you can write in the past tense like increased, decreased, right? Not will increase or will decrease. Let's read my answer. The line graph displays information regarding the proportion of the citizens residing in 4 separate countries in Asia. Instead of Asian countries, I wrote countries in Asia, namely the Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia, in the span of 8 decades, which means 80 years, from 1970 to 2040. Overall, the amount of the total populace in all 4 countries increased significantly and is expected to do so in the coming years, which means already increased, and also in the future it is expected to increase, with all but the Philippines more than doubling its numbers. You can see that yes, the Philippines, they also increased their city population, but not double. It wasn't double, but for the others it's at least double. In comparison, Indonesia went from being the city with the lowest number of its people living in urban areas to the second most populated urbanized country, whereas Thailand and the Philippines saw comparatively lower rises in this area. So how many sentences? 2 sentences in the overview paragraph. Malaysia, neck and neck with the Philippines, with about 30% of its population taking residence in cities. So in the start it was neck and neck, right? Blasted through its competitor in 2000. So in 2000 it was far away from its competition, which was what? The Philippines. Malaysia was by far the first, very comfortably, and is expected to retain its position as the country with the highest residence in its urban areas in 2040, with a percentage higher than 80% of citizens. See, over 80% will live in cities, it is expected. Though the Philippines also experienced a steep growth in 1990, in brackets with around a 20% growth from the past decade, it could not sustain its high amount of city residents, falling to nearly 40% in 2010. So what happened? The Philippines, their city population actually decreased from the year 1990 to 2010. So it was around 40, almost 40, to nearly 40% in 2010, after which it rose again. So again it increased and is expected to keep a steady rise, right, as it reaches the year 2040 with around 55% of its population residing in cities. So which 2 countries did I talk about? Malaysia and Philippines, right, in 1 paragraph. Since this paragraph was already getting big, I separated the body paragraph into 2. So which 2 countries are left? Thailand and Indonesia, right? Regarding the other pair of countries, over 80% of Thai and Indonesian people lived in villages in 1970, but this number rapidly dropped for the latter, for the Indonesian people. Latter means the next one and the former means the previous one, as Indonesia is expected to be comfortably in the second position in terms of the highest population living in its cities in 2040. So see, Indonesia was in number 3, but then it will go to what? Indonesia was actually in number 4 in the last place, and then it will go to number 2. As for Thailand, it also saw a steady growth and will particularly increase in the decades to come, which means in 2030 and 2040 in the future, and already it has seen a steady growth, which means before 2020 in the past tense and after 2020 in the future tense. finally reaching a city to village ratio of almost 50-50. The city ratio is around 50% of the population will be living in cities and 50% will remain in the villages. Before wrapping up, I would like to draw your attention to the rubric or the marking criteria of writing task 1. There are 4 marking criteria or marking elements. These are task achievement, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, and grammatical range and accuracy. So task achievement is how well you have answered the question. Make sure to write at least 150 words. Write an effective overview. Remember to include details in the body paragraphs, okay? So details in the body paragraphs but not in the overview paragraph. And you should have relevant descriptions and comparisons, okay? So remember that this is a report to describe the chart or the graph or the map, and also relevant comparisons are expected. So do not forget to compare the data. So these all will lead to an increase in task achievement, and I think it's actually easy to get a good mark in task achievement, because even if your grammar is not well, even if your writing style, even if your vocabulary is not very strong, still it's possible to get a 9 out of 9 in task achievement, right? For example, this one is very easy. An overview, you need practice for this, and these two, they are also very easy to do. So just remember this. For coherence and cohesion, you have to make sure that the ideas logically make sense and they are in sequence. For example, paragraphing, you should have separate paragraphs for your overview and your body paragraphs. That's why my suggestion is to write the overview in the second paragraph and give the paraphrasing of the background information in the first paragraph, and in the third paragraph write the body paragraph. And if you need to do so, then you can divide the body paragraph into 2. And also you should have some linking words. So what are linking words? Like first, second, third, overall, on the other hand, in contrast. These are linking words. But you do not need linking words in every sentence, but when it's required, you should include them. Lexical resource is basically vocabulary, but you do not need to use fancy words, okay? It's totally unnecessary. But some topic specific vocabulary is important. For example, if it's about traveling, then you should use words like tourism. And synonyms, you have to be very good at using synonyms. They are, you can say, mandatory for scoring high in lexical resource, especially when it comes to paraphrasing the question's information, the background information in the first paragraph. And also some other synonyms are required. For example, if you write increase once, then for the next time, instead of saying increase, writing increase, write something like rose. Say that something decreased. You can write words like declined. You can say words like plummeted if it's a sharp decrease. So please study synonyms like these. Finally, for grammatical range and accuracy, remember that it's both range and accuracy. So range refers to the variety of grammatical structures, sentence structures you have used, and accuracy is basically about whether you have made grammatical mistakes or not. If you have not made a lot of mistakes, then your grammar is accurate. So actually, it is quite difficult to improve your accuracy. However, it is quite easy, I would say, to improve, to enhance your range. How can you do that? Actually, my suggestion, number one suggestion, is to learn to use complex sentences. Because complex sentences are not in fact complex. If you just use 2 simple sentences, maybe that achieves the task. However, this is not showing the examiner that you can use different types of sentence structure. And particularly in the writing module, you can see in the rubric, just Google IELTS writing task 1 or IELTS writing task 2 rubric or marking criteria. You will see that if you do not use complex sentences in this area, you will not even get a 4. Can you believe that? Even if your accuracy is completely perfect, if you have used 0 subordinate clauses or 0 subordinate conjunctions, while, where, if, you will not get even a 4 in grammatical range and accuracy. So that will lower your overall writing score. So don't make this mistake. It's quite easy actually to learn to use complex sentences. So that's all for the video. Let me know what you think, and please subscribe to show your support. and I'm planning to make videos, separate videos for all the IELTS modules. Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching again, and hope you enjoyed and hope you stay with me on my journey to become more fluent in English.